Let's talk about Mexican cowboys. Let's talk about black cowboys. So here in American culture, when we think of cowboys, we think of a white guy, European descent. He's the cowboy. That's who we think of because that's the way our movies were made. And we still carry over that concept. But here in more recent history, we're seeing in movies, there will be cowboys of African descent and cowboys of ultimately Mexican descent that we'll see here in American movies and TV shows and stuff. And that is more legitimate. And this is, I'll admit, I completely am inspired by the show on Netflix, Adam Ruins Everything. He has one about the Wild West. And he talks about this. He says, in reality, this whole concept of cowboys in the Wild West, most cowboys actually were either former slaves or they were Mexicans, because at the time, that part of the United States basically won it in a war from Mexico. So California, Texas, etc., from Texas to California, all that was Mexico. But we won it in a war. We started a war and we took it from them. So then that became the United States, but ultimately those were Mexican people living there. So the whole cowboy culture, really, it's borrowed from Mexican people. And then for the fact that there were all these now former slaves looking for work, these black men were cowboys, actual cowboys. They were black and they were Mexican. But there's irony associated that within our minds when we think of that. Like, oh yeah, okay, a black cowboy, okay. There shouldn't be anything ironic about it. It's just that we have been led to believe differently on old cowboy movies that everybody watched back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. That was the concept of, and it was very racist too, because ultimately the Native Americans are typically the bad guys, right? Cowboys and Indians, that's the saying, that's the game, cowboys and Indians. And I mean, for me personally, on a personal note, my hometown, Fort Payne, Alabama, you go on Main Street, there's like a sign that I guess the government or the city or the state put up, and it tells you that was one of the starting points for the Trail of Tears. What was going on at that time during the Trail of Tears was Christian missionaries were there working with Native Americans and teaching them English and providing education for them. And then the Trail of Tears happened, and all the all of the people in charge of moving the Native Americans out, got them out of there and moved them out, and many died along the way. And so I'm from a town that has that history, and I think it's just so sad. So for me, anytime I think about Native Americans, I never see them. It's difficult for me to see them as the bad guys. I see them as the victims. But yeah, when you look at those cowboy movies, that's how it was. It was white cowboys being attacked by the Native Americans, the Indians, and that's the plot. But it typically was never. I mean, were there cowboy movies where it was a white guy and he teamed up with the Native Americans to protect them, and along the way, fellow cowboys happen to be Mexican and black also? Like, does that movie exist? Maybe it does now, but typically when we think of those old Westerns, we don't think about that. I don't know anything. You know so much more than I do. Raise my IQ. Teach me what I need to know. Right here in the comments.